Great. So we'll kick off. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kira Griffin, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Most of you know Trinzo as a company who supports clients in the life science industry navigate quality and regulatory challenges. But what you might not know is over a year ago, we launched an AI program to explore how AI can help our clients address their challenges. So one thing we've learned is that there is a lot of AI solutions out there and it can be quite overwhelming. That's why we've designed our Inspire framework. This is our core methodology that helps our clients navigate AI transformation. While each step is crucial, the process isn't strictly linear. You can tackle many of these activities in parallel, making it really flexible for any organization, whether you're running a small pilot or a large scale program. To support our clients through the first two stages of this, that is one of the reasons why we've launched this new AI webinar series to create a space for learning and collaboration. In today's session, we'll focus on the critical skill of prompt engineering, and we'll be showing you how to apply it in practice. This won't just be theory, we'll be running 2 live demos, so fingers crossed it all runs smoothly. But our key objective today is to teach you the key principles of prompt engineering and to promote ideas for you and your team. We want this session to be as engaging as possible, so just to make sure you're all there, I'm going to just throw out a question and you can answer it in the chat. So what large language models or LLMs do you know of and have you used? So while you're all answering that there, for today's demo, we'll be using ChatGPT, but there's a whole host of LLMs that you can use. Throughout the session, if you have any questions at all throughout the demos, you can just pop the questions into the Q&A box and we can come back to them at the end. So with that, I'm excited to introduce our 2 speakers for today's session. We have Connor Flynn, Head of Innovation here at Trinzo. With over 20 years of experience, Connor built and founded his own machine learning company prior to joining us. He's here to share his deep insights into innovation and the possibilities AI can create for our sector. Alongside him, we have Colm O'Rourke, our expert quality and regulatory consultant. Colm brings over 10 years of experience in the industry with a time in a notified body. He'll ground our conversation today in reality, helping us balance the possibilities of AI with the critical requirements of regulation. So with that, I'm very excited to kick into the session and explore our conversation. So thank you for joining us, and I will hand it over to Colm.
Thank you very much, Kira. Lovely task grounding this in reality. It's a nice role to have for this webinar. Welcome everyone that's listening. So as Kira said, we're going to explore prompt engineering today in a very practical way. And we're going to do it, I guess, looking through 2 different lenses. And the first one being deep research and the second one being just a sort of regular engagement with the chat function in ChatGPT. So to support this, we've kind of created a fictitious company, which is just completely made up. Medisorb is the name. It's a wound care manufacturer, Class 2A products for use in hospital environment and home environment. And the first function that Connor is going to talk us through is the deep research. And the topic, the kind of use case that we're going to tackle here is the most recent change to EIFU. So many of you will be aware there was an update to an implementing regulation. It went live last month here in Europe. So pretty much all devices can choose to move from paper to EIFU. There's some requirements there. And it's something that many medical device manufacturers are looking at. And I'm sure many of you listening now are looking at it as well. And it's a good example of a task for deep research. And Connor's going to kind of explain why this particular task that we're asking is well suited to deep research. And then the sort of second part, we're going to interact directly with the chat with a different topic. We're going to look at marketing material for regulatory compliance. So I might hand over to Connor now to kind of take us through the deep research aspect. But Connor, at the start, if you could give us just a little bit, maybe information as to why would you use deep research over regular chat? What is it good at versus regular, and some of the use cases?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Colin, for that, and thanks, Kira. That's very good. Yeah, deep research is a tool that you'll find on a lot of the LLMs on Gemini or Copilot or anything like that, and it's a really good task for complex strategic tasks. And the big warning around using deep research for anything is only use it either to educate yourself, or if you are an expert in the field and have the ability to analyze and verify the quality of the output. So I suppose it's not good for short tasks or quick tasks. It's really good for generating ideas for big long reports, if you know what I mean, or educating yourself. Now, what I'm hoping to show you here is, like, we're going to use Colum's wonderful case studies, and they're so good, the companies that he invented and the use cases. But I want you to keep your eye on the structure of the prompt that I'm using in here, because that general overall structure is a good starting place for any set of prompting that you're going to do. So I've pre-prepared some prompts. Can you all see my screen with Chat GPT there?
Yeah.
Anybody scream at me if you can't? All good?
Good.
I'm just using the normal Chat GPT-5. I'm not going to change any models or anything like that. I'm just going to paste my prompt in here. Okay, so the big things to think about when you're starting a prompt or doing a prompt or anything like that, you need to think about, give your prompt a role or a persona. This is really important for building the context, but also increasing the intelligence of the prompt that you're going through. Then you're going to think about giving it context. Then you're going to give it an instruction, then input and output. So again, persona or role at the start, context, which you can kind of build through or reset through any thing you're doing, what you wanted to do, what data you wanted to access, which is input or input, and then how you want it to be output. So if you look at this, you are a strategic consultant, an expert strategic consultant specializing in the EU medical device regulatory landscape. So that's the persona I've given this chat. Your client is the CEO of the company described in the attached files. So that reminds me, I need to attach some of the pre-prepared files, which are a company description and a description of the products that that company sells. Thank you, Colin. And you can see them there. This is quite a sophisticated prompt, and where the instruction is inferred and more context is inferred through this. The EU has updated its regulation for electronic instructions for use, and the CEO needs to present a strategic business case to the board. So this is giving the context to the agent in order to understand what sort of output it wants. So it's doubling up on tasks there. And watch this, they don't want a simple compliance list. So that negative in there hijacks the logic of the engine and makes it think deeper, putting in a negative comparison in there. They don't want a simple compliance checklist. They need actionable intelligence to make a strategic decision. So this will suggest that this is the output I want needs to be in this format. So I've trained the chat to do that. Now I just need to go into deep research, which you can find in here in the plus button. You find it in different places, in different ones. And ChatGPT usually asks some clarifying questions just to lock down the context a bit better. Here there are 4 of them. So 1, what is the primary business goal? Cost reduction enhanced. Let's just copy and paste and say, well, Kira gets upset when I mumble. Kira, shout at me if you think I'm mumbling too much.
Wait, here, while you're answering that, Connor, I might just sort of reiterate a point, and it's an objective of this webinar and obviously the series, but this one in particular is kind of to to first, for anyone that isn't aware, to make you aware that prompt engineering exists. I wasn't aware that that such a thing existed not that long ago. So that it exists, that it's really important, and then how to do it. And there is a sort of framework that Connor has showed us here about setting the role, providing the context, putting the limitations and barriers to really help you get the most out of the chat. And you'll see it in the second example as well. So I think that it's an important takeaway for people here is that, you know, you were in control of the chat, and you are in control of the, I mean, we all know the phrase rubbish in, rubbish out, and it applies here as well. So the better the quality, the prompt, the better the output.
Yeah.
But we'll see that throughout the examples here. So sorry, Connor, go ahead.
That's very true, Colm. You see here, I've just answered the 4 questions because this isn't a high stakes thing. And I'll set it running. The first thing you'll notice about deep research is it'll take 10 to 15 minutes to run. So we'll let this run in the background while we move on to other things.
Yep.
Now
and we will be sent, if we don't get back to this as well, kind of, we have obviously a pre-prepared answer that we'll send out to everyone to give you that idea of what the kind of strategic business case would look like.
Yeah. Now the big things to remember is context is king, but there's no way I can possibly get all the context that's in my head or in about my company into this context box. So don't forget, you're the boss here. So you need to be able to.
Yeah, that leads me kind of to the risk, like what with something like deep research, you know, it's going to produce a very detailed strategic assessment here for us. But with deep research, what are kind of risks that people might need to look out for?
So that's very, you've got it spot on there, Colm. So like there are risks in terms of the context, there's risks in terms of the quality of the data you're putting in, all that. But the number one risk with deep research is you'll be shocked. If you haven't seen this before, you'll be shocked with the apparent underline 100 times quality of the output. And although it will be far more factually accurate than a shorter chat that you do, if you don't have an expert eye looking over the response, if you know what I mean, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble. So use this in terms of a creativity tool for an executive level person or someone with a strategic function, or use it as a learning tool in order to update your knowledge or broaden your view of things that you're looking into.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
While we have
go
that
on to our
running,
next part.
yeah, we'll open up a new fun window here.
Yeah. So I'll set the scene for this one, will I?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is our kind of second. We'll spend more time on this one now. So this is where we're going to interact sort of back and forth with the chat, and keeping our fictitious wound care company here. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the task that often falls to regulatory, the specific task of reviewing draft marketing material, right? So it often will fall to regulatory to review and perhaps approve or just comment. It depends how your company is structured, where the authority lies. But the anyone that's involved in that, I guess what you'll know or has done it in the past, what you'll know is that it's really important that your marketing material doesn't ascribe any new functions or claims that isn't approved for your device. So we're talking about intended purpose, indications, patient population, use environment, intended users, all that kind of stuff. So when someone is a regulatory professional is reviewing marketing material for regulatory accuracy, it's a pretty involved job. So you need to know your own approval quite well. You need to have a good understanding of the clinical application of the product, and then you actually need a decent understanding of language as well, because like marketing people, and I hope there's a few on the call here, they're incredibly good at language. That's part of their role, right? So they will describe the use of a product in a way that sounds fantastic, but you have to think like a regulator would think, and think, okay, are we kind of saying perhaps it's doing something that it's not strictly approved to do? So what we're going to use ChatGPT for today, it's not to review and approve material, but to support us as a tool, right? So we are the regulatory professional here, and we are using ChatGPT. We're feeding it, and you'll see when Connor works through this, we're feeding it with a detailed device description that we've prepared in the past. Connor talked about how good they were. Obviously, they were prepared with AI, with ChatGPT. So I didn't sit down for 2 or 3 days coming up with, this fake product. So we are feeding the chat with very detailed information, essentially like section 1 from your Annex 2 tech file. So the device description. And then we're going to work through a series of prompts, and then we're going to feed it with 2 versions of marketing material. And then we're going to sort of have a back and forth with it while it identifies perhaps some, sketchy claims that are in the marketing material. So that's the specific task. And as you guys are doing that, the process we go through can be taken and replicated in many different use cases. So a lot of you perhaps aren't working in RA or will never have to do this task, but the process may still be relevant. And the reason we pick this kind of marketing task is it's quite topical right now with Whoop and everything that's going on with the FDA. So the FDA, looked at Whoop's marketing material, even I think, some of the social media posts from the CEO, for example, and the FDA determined that they were ascribing functions to the product that, don't align with what it's been approved to do. So this is a really important function, and it can be a time-consuming one. And I think we're going to show, hopefully here today now, that it can be done in a much more efficient way, but without losing any sort of control or detail that you would expect to have. So I'll hand over to you, Connor.
Yeah, that's great, Colm. So as Colm was saying, I'm going to bring you through what's called a prompt chain, which is a series of prompts to achieve a task. And I came up with this prompt chain on the back of Colm describing what the challenge was and what people in regulatory roles might do. So I'm going to bring you through. I put together 3 different types of jobs. There's some matching jobs at the start that I'll show you. That'll save you a lot of time. Then there's some planning, and then there's some communication. There is a communication prompt, but just try to keep your eye on the structure of the prompts and just try to think how this might be applicable for something that you might be doing. So like if the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ground the chat. So I want to make sure that I reduce hallucinations and get it focused in on the task that we're looking to do. And look here, you can see a lot of similarities with my original prompt. Act as a meticulous regulatory affairs professional. You see, I've given it the role. I've given the task. I've talked about the documents that I now need to upload, which are the same ones I uploaded to the deep research. So that's information about the company and information about the products. And I've told it, this is the only source of truth for approved claims. So I've narrowed the context severely here to make sure that it doesn't go outside and hallucinate or make up things. Do not infer any capabilities beyond what is explicitly stated here. And I've attached the relevant documentation, and I've said let's just get there and make sure that you're ready for this. And it'll do a little bit of a check through the documents, and it'll come back and tell me I'm ready. And you can see here I'm ready. It's really important. A lot of people talk about oh, my chats get worse and worse. A bit of that is because of context rotten. A bit of that is because you're jumping from context to context. So just make sure that you start a new chat if you're going to take on a discrete task. Now I'll start my matching jobs. So the first matching job I'm going to do is like direct literal matching. So I've prepared all these prompts in advance. I am not an AI able to type at 1,000,000 miles an hour yet. Please review the attached draft marketing brochure text. So I'll upload those 2 documents that Colm has made. These are 2 different promotional documents with language in it made by the marketing department. Present your findings in a 3-column table with the following headers. So I've given very explicit instructions, and very explicit expected output and the format of that expected output. I want to see the marketing statement, the compliance issue, and the reasoning behind why it has identified a potential issue, So Colin, can you see this coming up in front of us?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yep,
we
a
can
lot
see that
faster
there's a lot.
than I would be creating. Yeah, I was doing it manually.
So
Yeah,
any
so
you
what
want
we've
to
got,
point to? Yeah.
I don't know if anything in particular, but I suppose just what we're looking at here on the left-hand side is it has extracted marketing statements, marketing claims. It has identified if there's an issue there and sort of told us why. And it's yeah, I like we've obviously run through this before, so I've seen this before. But the first time I saw it, it honestly it blew me away the way that it was able to kind of infer from the wording what might be perceived as a claim. And I think you talked about using a new chat or training your chat. Like it can be the case, or can it be the case, Connor, maybe you could speak to this, where a chat can be sort of guided to dial up or dial down the
Yeah.
strictness. So if we're talking about, for example, risk class, if we're talking about a class 3 implantable, we perhaps want to be incredibly picky in terms of reviewing the marketing material. For a lower class, not that you're going to let anything go out the door that's not approved, but perhaps you don't need to pour over every single word in as much detail. So I mean, this has given a really, really thorough, like reduce healing time by 75%. It's told us that's unsupported. In what we have provided it, there is no clinical data or approved claim for that. So that, just the speed at which it produces this and the reasoning behind it is really impressive.
Okay, so I'll move on to a second. Now, this comes from particularly from column in implied use, isn't that right? So what I'm going to do after my direct literal matching, I'm going to do semantic and tonal matching here with another prompt. So it's very similar, but slightly different. I keep putting in thank you and please, even though OpenSea says it costs them $1 billion a year for people thanking their LLMs, but
Look,
I don't
kindness
care.
costs nothing. Isn't that what they say?
Well, it costs about $1 billion a
It
year.
costs someone else something, yeah.
Now, notice here, I want you to reread the marketing text and focus on the implied claims and overall tone, and identify any words, while not directly contradicting the improved information, might mislead a patient or healthcare professional. Look for this, and that, and list your findings as a bulleted list. So this is my expected output here. Okay, so that's going to intended use, as Colm educated me before this call. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Anything jumping out to you?
No, I mean, it's the things that regulatory people pick up. I mean, look, not everyone on the call is regulatory. I'm sure of that. But if you're in the device industry, I suppose it's the how important wording is, like faster healing, for example, that jumps out there. So maintains optimal moisture levels for faster healing. You might think, well, that sounds great, but implies accelerated clinical outcomes, which are not supported. We have not provided any data that says this is faster than what, so that's all the kind of information. And I guess this is, a task. I mentioned that while this can be a time-consuming task, and who does this, like this isn't something a junior regulatory person is often, like, they may initiate the task, but they possibly don't have the experience to pull out something like faster healing and think that there's anything wrong with that. So again, this is a brilliant tool to support your existing teams with the kind of a more challenging task.
That's great. Now I'm going to move on now to the generative side of this. So we found out there are issues. Now I want solutions to those issues. So you see a prepped prompt I have here. Based on the compliance issues you have identified, please suggest compliant alternative phrasing for the problematic statements. The goal is to retain the marketing intent while ensuring full compliance with the approved indications. Notice for a generative task, I move to looking for an output that is goal orientated rather than exactly orientated. Notice how I've opened up the context window for the search here. And and I want to present it as problematic statement with a suggested alternative. So let's have a look and see what comes from that. Anything jump out to our expert there?
Are you talking to me or ChatGPT? No, I mean, look, nothing in particular, but I guess it's just the clarity at which it presents the answers are cool. Like the ideal for diabetic foot ulcer, it's telling you remove entirely. Like you can't reword that because that contradicts a contraindication. So, I mean, you guys that are listening and now, you didn't see the detailed device description that we fed into this initially, but one of the contraindications was, diabetic foot ulcers. So again, it's picked that up. It's retained that information throughout this entire chat, and it's saying, no, there's no way you can reword this. It actually is not approved for that function. Yeah, which is nice.
It's really good. So just to go back there, I've done a whole load of different matching tasks here to get deeper and deeper into what needs to be done. Now I need to plan to do something. So this next couple of prompts are about my planning from that. Now I want you to look at this. So based on our entire conversation and all the analysis performed. So I said this so that it doesn't just take its context from the last output, because you can imagine you probably fiddled with this as you were going along, said, well, that's important for us, or that's not important for us, or made decisions along the way. Generate a concise promotional material compliance review report. And this is the format of the report. And the tone should be formal and objective. I've kind of put the persona or the role in at the end here, but the machine doesn't really care. So
this kind of,
yeah.
could you have put like a blank Word document template in there and asked it to populate that in report format?
You could, but not just from a chat here. You'd need other tools and other things to be done to auto-populate something else. Then you're moving into agentic AI where you're getting it to do something. So I usually copy and paste into Word. But we have partners who help you fill out forms who have myqms.ai has a lot of tools that allow you to auto-populate forms, which are pretty cool. You can see here we've got a report. Now notice the way ChatGPT keeps on giving you more annoying advice. But imagine I want to do that report. Now I probably need to create an action plan to fix the problem. So here you can see I've said, now convert the findings and recommendations from the report into a formal corrective action plan and follow this format. As you were saying, if you had you probably have your own templates or plan templates and use your own one. Don't change. I just did this because it's nice and easy for me. And you can see here, I have a nice corrective action plan here, and you can see it's put an owner, issue, required action, owner, and then you can fill out the rest. You can populate project management software or whatever you use with that. And so that's my planning. And now you might want to communicate this to this marketing lead who seems to be the owner of all the problems in the company. And you see, I've said, please draft a professional and collaborative email memo from me to the marketing lead. It should start by acknowledging their work on the new material state. It should do ABC, maintain a positive and team-orientated tone. And depending on the culture of your company, you can mix that up a little bit. So you'll see here a nice email that I could copy and paste into an email. Obviously, if we had an agentic system set up, it would just populate your Outlook or your Gmail or whatever. Here's the email that goes out, and it's asking to attach those two reports that I generated that I'd probably copy and paste into Word. But you're already ahead of the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, so we've gone through this in 15 minutes or whatever, but we had prepared, the prompts beforehand. Like realistically, if someone in industry is doing this task using ChatGPT, this could be 2 or 3 hours work potentially, because you're reviewing, and like you said, Connor, you're tweaking your prompts and your questions, and you're obviously, you have to review the output. So I think sometimes people are under the misconception that, like, do it like that, 30 seconds, I'll have this task done, and that's it. Like, not if you want to get the most out of the use of AI. It could take 2 or 3 hours, but what would it take without it? And this is 2 or 3 hours of one person's resource. Whereas, often there could be multiple people involved in a project like this. And as we said at the start, I hope everyone that's listening in is kind of has been following the flow and the steps that Connor has talked us through, and applying that to tasks that are relevant to themselves. Because obviously this is, we had to pick one particular topic. This may or may not be relevant to anyone listening on the call, but it kind of doesn't matter. It's the process that you've showed us, Connor, the basic. Actually, could you very quickly recap that kind of, like, that flow
Okay.
that you want to take a chat through? So I
So
think we're moving. Kira, when are we into Q&A? Are we soon?
Yeah, there's no questions at the minute, so if you can keep
Oh,
going
okay,
on,
right.
I can
We'll keep going.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, as Colin said, this specific task or set of tasks may not be in your job description, but I hope you're starting to think and imagine different jobs that you spend a lot of time doing that are not the most interesting jobs in the world, that are prone to a lot of error and stuff like that. As Colin said, you need to think out your problem in advance. You need to make a strategy of how you're going to address the problem. And then you need to be very disciplined in your approach as you work through the problem. And you'd use slightly different techniques, tasks, or prompts depending on what you need to do for your role. I identified very quickly there's a lot of matching tasks in this. So I thought out, what different ways can I do matching? You saw the first, well, I grounded the chat first and made sure that I need it to be precise. I need to limit hallucinations, as they call them, or I need to be careful that you're not making stuff up here. So I started off with the direct mark matching task following that, because I wanted only the facts, only from the documents. Now, depending on what task you're looking to do, quality and regulatory, I expect that you need to be very disciplined and very controlled around the accuracy of what you're doing, and no space for misleading stuff or whatever. Then I moved on to the semantic and tonal matching, because of what I'd learned from Colin and within Trinzo about this implied use, or what's it called, the intended use.
Yeah.
So that
Moving
although
outside, like,
language,
implied claims that you're not approved for.
yeah, so that's why I moved into the semantic and toning matching. And then I wanted to show, well, how can I fix that problem? Because generative is the huge power in this, but that I had the engine grounded tightly and trained around what I wanted and what I was looking at. I was then able to introduce a generative or a make stuff up part for me to review. And I'm always telling the chat to give me feedback so that I can check stuff in a format that's easy for me to check. So I don't, you'll see from the deep research, it's going to be 30, 40 pages long. It's very difficult for a human to check it. But I want to be able to check everywhere. I'm the human in the loop. I'm the boss. I'm in control. So they were my matching tasks. And then I thought more from my perspective, well, I need to make a plan about this. So how do I make a plan? So remember, I reset the context and I said, everything that I've worked on here. Now, often if my chat had got unwieldy, I would have copied and pasted that into a Word document, set it up as a context document, and started a new document, because we don't want context rot or the engine to get confused about what it's trying to do. But I went through 2 planning tasks, one writing up the report and one creating a plan. And then I went on to the communication task, where I wanted to pull the whole thing together and I could work with somebody who needed to take the task forward from here.
That's
Very
great,
good.
Connor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you both. We do have a
And that
couple of
every time I
questions.
talk to you, sorry, Kira, the context rot. Like I've never heard that term before. Where you come on? I assume you didn't just coin that now today, did you?
I didn't. And remember,
Okay, right.
you guys been asking me, why does my chat go all over the place? And
Yeah.
my simple answer in my head was, well, it's non-deterministic. It's a probability engine, didn't. But then I found some guys in California talking about context rot, and that seems to be
Yeah.
the
That hits
colloquial
home a
term
bit
for
more. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
gets confused if you give it too much information. Yeah.
Yeah. It's relatable.
It's his phrase of the week. I think he figured it out
Yeah.
Monday and he
Okay.
hasn't stopped saying it since.
Yeah.
So just we have a couple of questions here. I think this one is more directed to you, Connor. But how do you manage confidentiality of documents that you upload or share in a chat?
That's a really good question. I obviously can't answer it in the 2 minutes I have here, but don't upload any confidential documents to an open source AI, and certainly not one that isn't paid for. Now, most of you will have something like Copilot in your office, which would be quite safe and secure for most things, but for highly sensitive documents, you need a proper plan around that, and you need proper security protocols in place. So if you go back to our Inspire framework, the third step or the third part of the framework is all about making sure that you have your security and compliance in place and appropriate. And you need to have policies and an understanding from people using these tools what is appropriate to upload and what is not. That's a learning journey, and that's a company specific, and that depends on a lot of different things. But that's a really excellent question.
Great. Another question we have, I think, for you, Connor, is what prompt patterns help guide an LLM to answer only from my provided knowledge source and not make up external info?
So you see, I used a lot of grounding phrases in there. So like you see my first one there, this is the only source. It's not really the prompt pattern, but continuously regrounding it, especially if you're switching tasks or if the chat has become long. You need to reground it. And remember, sometimes... So it was very natural to me to see myself as the boss and the chat being my tool. But a lot of people anthropomorphize. Okay, I'm getting into trouble here. A lot of people take what is written
I'm
down
here to
as
ground you. I
truth.
need to give you some grounding guidance now, Connor. I think there's a bit of rot going on here.
So if in any, keep regrounding and keep checking off multiple engines. So I ran this, when we came up with this, I ran it in Gemini, I ran it in GPT, I checked the answers against each other, I made sure that my job had been done properly. And like, if you need to keep checking for hallucinations, double checking, verifying the output and everything like that. I tried to break this up into small enough parts that the human can check at every stage in case it's going off track, but very true, especially for less clear or more meandering tasks that you've done. You need final checks in place before anything goes out.
Yeah, I think like I would have been inclined previously to try and do everything you just did in one prompt. To give it the material and say, here, go and do this. So I think like the more that we work on this internally at Trinzo, it's like it's learning a new skill completely. It's like, the what was it, the ECDL, the European Computer Driving License from 25 years ago or whatever. Like this is actually a new skill, how to engage appropriately with AI to get the most out of it. And maybe that ties into Eric's question, Kira, the next one.
Yeah, Colm, do you want to answer that? Are there any training materials available that guide structured, effective prompts?
Well, Connor, you probably can better answer, publicly available training. I'm sure there's a lot
there's
of
loads
out there.
available online, but you see, one of the big things about this new generative AI is it gives so much power. As Colm, as you were saying, you don't have a driver's license, but you have access to such power. the needs of any particular job or any particularly company can be so bespoke that it's good to get a general education, but you really need to work deep in what's needed for your job. And you need to work with somebody closely or with quality and regulatory experts who know what they're talking about so that they can adapt the training for yours. So like most of the training out there is for techie people, and techie people are make 100 mistakes, doesn't matter, we'll clean it up after we get feedback from our customers. That's a problem in our area, if you know what I mean. Just be careful. The high level training is good, but if you actually want to do anything that would be work quality, you're going to need people who understand your industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to be clear, Trinzo do provide that as well. I mean, we might as well say that while we're here as well. Like, so we do have a service where we can provide training in exactly the context of what Conor is talking about.
I think, Colin, just on what you were saying earlier, I'd put all this into one prompt and you could get away with it. And you could get away with it even 5 times out of 10, but you're going to get done. And like, how do you verify? How do you stand over the output of what's come out when you don't have a clue what's happened? You have to make sure that you're in control of it. If it's for work and if it's for a task as important as this, you need to make sure that you're in control. You're in the driver's seat. You're driving the car. It's not on autopilot.
Yeah. I think that ties in with Jane's next question, actually, about how confident can we be that the LLM is aligned with regulatory requirements. And I mean, I think like it varies, right? But following that kind of process where there's a little bit more visibility because you're going kind of step by step. You're not, putting something in saying, is this compliant with the MDR? Like that's, you're rubbish in, rubbish out. You'll get nothing of real value back there. So it's breaking things down so that the only way you'll know, like, how confident will you be that it's compliant is because you have to review the output and actually determine that it's compliant, right? That ultimately that's what it is. So that maybe at some point we'll get to a stage where there are specialist AI agents that we don't need to review the output. But from a regulator's perspective, like Conor said, we're not making shoes here. Like, this is medical devices. So at what point is the FDA going to be confident to say that that a human doesn't have to verify the output? I think we're a long way away from there. Now, in my personal experience, I'm continually shocked at how accurate it is. I'm not endorsing any particular one, but I see it week by week, month by month, getting more and more accurate. But I see that because I'm reviewing the output. And I think that's a really important takeaway here is, like, this doesn't mean you can fire 90% of your regulatory staff and have 2 people plus ChatGPT. Like, it's you can't really arm a junior regulatory person with this and expect them to produce the same thing that that someone with 25 years experience will do, because you still need the experience behind it. So this is really, it's a very sophisticated efficiency tool. And Conor, maybe I'm underselling it, but that's the way from a quality and regulatory perspective, I view this as an efficiency tool that I need to know. That we've had plenty of examples of this, EQMSs and things like that. You can't just dive into them. You need to understand them. You need to understand how to interact with them to get the most out of them. And this, for me, is just another one of those. It's an incredibly powerful efficiency tool that I can use to help me do my job, in a more efficient way.
Very good. The 2 things I'd add to that, exactly, I'd call it an efficiency or a productivity tool, a personal productivity tool, like your calculator for doing big sums. But I'm making the decision what number I'm writing down, and I'm double checking and triple checking.
We're just on time now, Conor. So.
Are we?
Oh yeah. There's your grounding.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you'd keep us here for the whole day if I let you. So I just want to jump in and thank our speakers, Colm and Conor, for doing 2 live demos today. I know that's not easy and it could have all went wrong, but I think you did a great job. And although the use cases mightn't have applied to you directly in your role, I hope you can apply the key principles of prompt engineering in your own context, and it could spark some ideas. So yeah, just a quick recap of the two takeaways. I think the main one is prompt engineering is a critical skill that you and your teams will need to develop, refine, and apply consistently. I know, Colm, you said there that you're impressed by how it's progressing, but I think that's also down to the fact that you're probably refining the skill of prompt engineering. And secondly, AI is a tool and it's not a replacement for expertise. So as a human, you're responsible, critical judgment, professional, regulatory responsibility all lies with the human. So yeah, definitely have the critical thinking hat on when you're working with AI. But yeah, on behalf of myself, Connor and Colm, we are very thankful that you joined our webinar today. We hope you learned something, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye now.
Well done.